Hello YouTube, this is Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you today. For this one I have another Scottish beer, and this is from one of the new Scottish craft breweries that have kind of appeared in the recent boom that we've had in Scottish craft brewing, and I've done a number of the reviews before for this brewery, so you'll find the link to those in the video description. I've been very impressed with what these guys have produced so far. So today we're going to go to the Windswept Brewery from Lossiemouth and have a look at their APA, American Paleo. Now, as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll just take you through a little bit of a history of the brewery and tell you a little bit about the local area as well, just for the benefit of those of you watching outside of Scotland, of course. But as is usual, as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter half of the video and you will catch that particular segment. But just so those of you watching outside of Scotland know exactly where we're talking about here, I always describe the country as looking a bit like a monster's head. So just below the monster's nose on the east coast you have the city of Aberdeen, the oil capital of Europe. Then if you follow the coast up and round along the north part there, you're eventually come to a corner, and right in this corner of the coastline is the city of Inverness, the Highland capital, just at the top of Loch Ness there. And if you go right in the middle of Aberdeen and Inverness, you have the town of Elgin, very famous for the Church of the Holy Trinity, Elgin Cathedral. Some very major historic events went on there with Robert the Bruce in Scottish history. And if you just go directly up to the north coast there, Elgin is a little bit inland, but if you go right up to the north coast, this is where the village of Lossiemouth is, where the Windswept Brewery is. And this of course is home to Scotland's only RAF base now. The British government recently shut Kinloss and Lossiemouth, sadly. It's a bit of a shame, but you know, that's what the British government are doing these days, sadly. And it's quite cool because this brewery is actually run by two former Tornado RAF pilots, and they actually the Tornadoes were based both at Kinloss and Lossiemouth. They just had the different variants. One base had the geographical reconnaissance variant and the other base had the fighter variant. I can't quite remember which one it was that had both of them. I think Kinloss had the fighters and Lossiemouth had the geographical reconnaissance ones. But anyway, it's quite cool to find a brewery that has an RAF connection as well, because I come from a big RAF family. This tankard I have here is number 22 Squadron. I nicked this from my dad to do this review, but my uncle gave him this because he used to fly the search and rescue ones, and number 22 Squadron was based at Lookers for a while, I believe, and we're flying the Wessex and things like that, one of the search and rescue squadrons in the Air Force. And my grandpa was also a Spitfire pilot during the Second World War as well. So as I say, quite cool to find a brewery that has a bit of an RAF connection to it. But to move on to the history of the brewery itself, as I mentioned, this is a very short history because they're a very new brewery. They only started up in 2012, but they were first known pardon me, they were first known as the West Beach Brewery, but this was only for a very short period of time, and construction of the brewery began in October 2012, and a month later they received their brewing vessels from Oban Ales down in Fort William, and by the end of 2012 they'd actually brewed their first beer. But the capacity of the brewery nowadays is apparently 3,000 pints per brew, and they also, it's quite cool because they are experimental even in this very early stage of their development, if you like. They have a small pilot brewery that they brew, and it has a capacity of 150 pints per brew. This is about 4 small barrels, and this is used to produce their test batches, and they actually they experiment with different variations in the yeast, fermentation profiles, different hops and different malts and things like that. So it's really cool that they're experimenting quite a lot with their beers at this very early stage, and they're producing some very good stuff so far in my opinion, and I'm sure they'll produce some very good stuff in the future, and they do deserve to expand just going by the quality of their beers. But you can actually go and visit the brewery, but they ask that you phone and book your visits in advance, and the website also has a blog where you can keep up to date with the current events at the brewery, and I'll stick the link to the brewery website in the description there, so if you are interested, go and check them out. And I'll also put the Facebook page as well, so if you're into that sort of thing, the social networking, go and give them a like and you can keep up to date with what's going on at the brewery. But with their brewing process, they apparently only use grain, hops, yeast and water in their beers. Actually sounds a little bit like the German Reinheitsgebot, but the water source for this brewery is Speyside water, and this is known for being some of the purest in the world, and it actually produces some really nice whiskies. And Speyside is just a region in the north of the country. Lossiemouth is actually in Moray, or Moray, I'm not quite sure what the exact pronunciation is to say it. A lot of people say it both ways, but it's in the northern part of the country, and this is sort of in between Aberdeen and Inverness. Again, it's a bigger region, but Moray is kind of like the county, if you like. But they actually have, as I mentioned, there's a lot of good whisky distilleries here, and you get a really nice train journey between Aberdeen and Inverness that takes you right through the heart of Speyside. But just to list some of the famous whisky distilleries for you, there's about 50 of these, so this is just a select list. You have Aberlour, Balvenie, Benriach, Benromach, Cardew, Cragganmore, Dallasdew, Glen Grant, Glen Moray, Glen Farclas, Glen Fiddich, Glen Livet, Macallan, Speyside Cooperage and Strathisla. But as I mentioned, there's a lot lot more of these going on, a lot more smaller ones as well, micro distilleries and stuff like that. But there's another lot of craft beer breweries in the area as well. Over in Forest, which is just to the west of Elgin actually, this is a really cool brewery there. This is the Speyside Craft Brewery. The guy that owns that brewery is an alumni of the same chemistry department that I study in at the moment. But you also have the Cairngorm Brewery down in Aviemore. They're producing some really nice stuff. And you have the Brewmeister Brewery to the east in Keith as well. Obviously well known for having held the title of World's Strongest Beer with their 67.5% snake venom. I really hope to try that for you at one point. But obviously there's other craft breweries in Aberdeen and Inverness as well. The Black Isle Brewery and the Cromarty Brewery as well. Then you've got Brewdog and things over by Aberdeen too. But to tell you a little bit more about the beers that this brewery produce, they have Wolf, which is a 6% dark strong ale. I've reviewed a couple of these for you before, so go and check the link out in the video description there. But Wolf is a really beautiful dark strong ale, really unique beer actually, and the water gives it a really nice feel in my opinion. There's the Blonde, which is a sort of English style pale ale, quite a nice malty thing with a sort of gardeny elements to it as well, if I remember rightly. They have this one, the APA, which I'll review for you in a minute, and they also have the Tornado, which is a beautiful 6.4% Citra Hop IPA. I was really impressed with this one, and this was the first review that I did from this brewery as well. But they also have the Weizen, which is a 5% wheat beer that was introduced for Mocktoberfest, and this is basically Moray celebrating Oktoberfest there in Elgin Town Hall. This is meant to be really good, so I hope they bottle this up at some point, but at the moment it's only available periodically on cask if you like. But they've also recently released a new limited edition barrel aged version of their Wolf. This one is called the Wolf of Glen Moray, and they called it this because of the distillery whose casks they used to age the beer. But this one comes in at 8.8% and it's limited to 513 bottles. I really hope I can get a bottle of this to review for you at some stage, but I move to Germany very soon to do my research placement for my master's degree, so hopefully I can pick one of these up for you and review that at some stage. Fingers crossed. I really enjoyed the Wolf beer, so hopefully I can get one of those to review for you at a later date. But let's get on to the tasting of this guy itself. This one is a 5% pale ale apparently. It describes itself as a traditional India Pale Ale IPA with a New World twist. It's available year round in bottle and in cask, and apparently it won gold at the SIBA 2013. This is the Scottish Independent Brewers Association, or the Society of Independent Brewers Association. It's something like that, but it's quite a prestigious award that this one's won, and the Wolf also won gold in this award ceremony as well, just in different categories. But they said this beer was actually a bit of a pleasant mistake, but they tasted it and liked it, so they simply tweaked the recipe and now they've made it a regular brew. I think this was actually the first beer that they brewed when they got their brewery all set up and things like that, but they say it's quite funny, it was a mistake and they just tweaked it a little bit and they seem to have made a very good beer with it, going by the fact that it's won an award. But I'll just bring up the camera and let you have a little look at the bottle art and things on this. I really pardon me, I really like the modern designs on these bottles here. They've got really nice labels as well. A lot of breweries just put sort of paper labels on these ones, but these have got a nice sort of satin finish, so they're not going to get destroyed if the bottle gets a little bit wet. Getting a little bit of condensation on this one since I've taken it out of the fridge, but a really nice design on this one here. It's just a plain bottle cap on this one as usual. It'd be nice, as I've said before, to see them put this in white on the top of their bottle caps or something like that, or even the whole thing. It'd be really nice. But let's get this guy out and get on with the tasting. Really looking forward to this one, and as I've said, I've been impressed by pretty much everything that these guys have produced so far. So let's pop this guy open and get on with it. A little bit of smoke as I open this one up, but let's get this guy poured here. Really nice sort of a deep golden colour here. Let's just sugar this up and try and get a bit more of a head on this one. Yeah, not too much of a head coming out with this one, I have to say, but still looks a really nice beer. I'll just bring the light over and check that you can see the colour of this one quite well. As you can see, it's a really sort of nice goldeny colour here. A little bit of a haze to it, but this is how they do their beers here. I quite like it when you've got a bit of a hazy beer. It gives it a bit of an impression of being unfiltered, but you've got just a very small head, maybe about a third of a finger here. I'll just move the light out of the way, that's actually really bright. But there's some visible carbonation there, some big bubbles sticking to the side and going up towards the bottom of the head there. That head is starting to dissipate, but it's a white head just sort of giving way to a little foamy layer that's going to form here. But yeah, a really attractive looking beer, a nice hazy, deep orange amber colour here. Let's give this guy a smell and see what we can pick up. Quite a bit of citrus in there. Orangey citrus, I would say. And you've got some caramel malt too as well, I think. And there's some biscuit and caramel malts in there, I would say. Just a little hint of spice in my opinion. And there might be some sort of red and darker fruits in there as well. Yeah, it's a really nice smelling one actually. It's got quite a complex aroma. You've got a just sort of mild malt character, but mainly sort of fruits. Maybe a hint of sort of a garden floral aromatic character to this one. But it's quite an attractive smelling beer. They do have a sort of underlying smell, the Windswept beers, and if you've tried a few of these beers, take a moment just to smell them, and you do get a sort of underlying thing here, and it may be just from the water source or the types of malts and things like that they're using, but there is a sort of underlying characteristic smell that you can pick up with the Windswept beers if you've had a few of these. But let's give this guy a taste and see how we get on. It's quite interesting, actually. You've got some dry, bitter hops up front there, and this is what you'd expect from an APA. And maybe some orangey flavours in there as well, but it's giving way to the sort of malty flavours quite quickly. It actually strikes me as being more of an English Paleo, but it does have some characteristics of a bitter as well. That's the thing. But yeah, you're getting the dry, bitter hops up front. There's some orangey flavours in there. And this is giving way fairly quickly to some sort of sweet, biscuity malts, and there's some nice caramel complementing that there as well. And I think there is a sort of touch of red fruits throughout this one as well. Yeah, the sort of gardeny character that I was picking up, if it is in there, it's very, very mild. The floral character really is in the background if it's there at all. But yeah, definitely you're opening up with a nice sort of dry bitter hops up front, which is what you would expect from an American Paleo. And there's some nice orangey flavours in there too, but it's giving way to the sweet biscuity caramel malts quite quickly. And I think there is just a touch of red fruit in here too. The garden floral aromatic character, as I was mentioning, is quite in the background. It's quite pushed back by this one. It's a kind of, you've got the sort of dry bitter hops pushing forward in this beer. But yeah, it's nice. This is a nice one. It's not quite the sort of characteristic you would expect from an American Pale Ale, I have to say. It strikes me as more of an English Pale Ale, maybe even pushing into the bitter category a little bit, but it's a nice beer. I can see why it's won a medal, but it confuses me a little bit as to it's described as an American Pale Ale, but they say in the description it's a traditional India Pale Ale as well. But this is a really nice beer. There's maybe just a little bit of confusion as to what category it exactly fits into, but a really nice beer nonetheless. In terms of the mouth with this one, this is mid-bodied. Quite a bit of a tangy mouthfeel to it, as I was saying, from the citrus fruit, and you've got a nice little bit of underlying sweetness from the red fruits as well, and just that nice sort of caramel biscuity malt running through it too. It's actually got a little bit of an oily mouthfeel, and I really like this with the beers, and this is something I found that's quite typical with the Windswept Brewery as well. They've got a nice sort of oily mouthfeel to it, and the carbonation, they're actually very good at measuring the carbonation and giving it just right. This carbonation makes it quite soft, but it has just a little bit of an attack to make it very drinkable and give it that nice little bit of crispness. This is quite a crisp sort of pale ale, this one. But yeah, I can see what they're saying with the description with this one, I can admit now. They're describing this one as a classic pale ale that has a bit of a new world twist on it, and that's where the sort of citrusy flavours would come into this one. But it does sort of impede onto the bitter category a little bit. It's a really nice beer, and I can see why it's won the awards, and it's obviously, if it's won an award, it's actually a very, very good beer. As I'm saying, there's a little bit of confusion as to exactly what kind of category this one would fit into. I would say to you, definitely give this one a try. It's a really nice beer, and you're not going to be disappointed with anything you find out of the Windswept Brewery for that matter. But it's a really nice beer, as I say. You're getting the nice dry bitter hops up front with the kind of orangey flavours in there. That's given way to a sort of biscuity caramel malt with just a little underlying of red fruit throughout this one, and you're finishing with a sort of dry and bitter finish, and the citrus comes out there a little bit again with the bitter hoppiness there. A really nice beer with a nice little oily mouthfeel, mid-bodied, a little bit of tang mouthfeel as well. But this is a really nice one. As I say, it kind of fits into three categories almost. It's got the characteristics of both an American Pale Ale in some parts, the English style Pale Ale in others, and it has a little bit of the bitter category as well, I would say. But a really nice beer nonetheless, and it's another one from the Windswept Brewery that I've been quite impressed with, I have to admit. A really good beer, and I highly recommend that you check out any of their beers if you get the chance. And as I say, the links to the brewery website, Facebook page are in the description there, and I've reviewed the other beers for you, so you can check those out as well if you're interested. And hopefully I can get a hold of one of the Moray Wolf beers. I really would love to review that one for them at one stage. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. I hope you found this one informative. I've enjoyed doing this one from one of my favourite Scottish craft breweries, one of the really good new breweries. These guys are definitely one to watch out for in the future. A lot of good beer I can see being produced by these guys. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Please let me know in the comments section if you've tried this beer yourself and what you think of it. This one, as I say, this one is a little bit interesting because it sort of fits into 3 categories in different ways, if you like. So please let me know your own thoughts on this one, and please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. But you've been watching Goddard Radio Moscow. I'll be back soon with another beer review. A lot of beer to go through this festive period, but thanks again for watching, and I shall catch you soon. Cheers.